Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Aileen Wuornos, and where we're picking up, Aileen is behind bars for an outstanding warrant, but police can still not tie her to the murder of 7 men. So what do? They use her former lover, Tyria Moore, to coerce her into a confession. Let's take a look at this clip, exactly how they did it.
There's been officials up at my parents' house asking some questions.
Uh-oh.
And I'm getting scared.
I think what happened, there was pictures in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a case of mistaken identity.
As the calls continued, Tyra became more insistent that the police were after her and her family. Wuornos began to suspect she was being tricked.
Listen, I gotta ask you something. Is there anybody in that room?
No, just me.
What?
What?
Is there anybody in your room?
No.
But over time, as she sat in jail and listened to her seemingly desperate lover, Aileen became less suspicious and more determined to protect Tyra.
I don't know whether I should keep on living or if I should...
No, Ty, listen.
What?
You go ahead and let them know what you need to know. If you want to know or anything, you're innocent. Listen, if I have to confess, I will.
On January 16th, 1991, Aileen took matters into her own hands.
The reason I'm confessing is there's not enough. There is room.
All right, Cece, I want to unpack my conflicting emotions with you because I hate Ty. I really do. But I hate her because she bailed on Aileen, and then she, sort of gave her up to the cops and made a deal with the police so that Ty didn't serve any time. And
she was not charged with anything.
She wasn't charged with anything.
No,
and sold her story. So she actually made money off of getting Aileen to confess. However, as I'm saying this, I'm like, okay, Aileen was a serial killer though, so I don't know if I was in the same position, I wouldn't sort of save myself as well. It just seems like it's hard for me to wrap my brain around this because Aileen really loved Ty.
Yeah.
And then it seems like Ty never loved her.
It was almost more convenient. She was paying for her lifestyle, and when she was going down, she was not about to go down with her.
Do you see where I'm coming from though? How Ty feels like a gross person for some reason, even though what she did was absolutely the right thing to do. Aileen needed to be stopped. She did the right thing. I agree with her actions. For some reason, I feel like her intention wasn't to do the right thing. It wasn't to stop Aileen from killing more. No. It was to save her own skin, and it was to get a little bit of money.
Yeah, and I think one thing I heard that was very interesting was that there was a point, so she killed Richard Mallory, and then a little bit of time went on, and then there was a period where in 4 weeks, I think she killed 3 people.
Yeah.
So it was like this spurt of killings. And at the same time that was happening, Ty's sister was visiting her and Aileen. They were living together, and the sister was trying to convince Ty to move back to Ohio and leave Aileen.
Which Ty did.
Which Ty ended up doing. But I think it's kind of telling that right when that was happening, Aileen, she'd been abandoned by everybody she was close to in her whole life. The only way she knew to really keep Ty around was by giving her money. And so how does she do that? She went and robbed more men, and then, as she said, to leave no witnesses, killed them. Any way you look at it, it's extremely tragic.
Yeah, it is absolutely. And then once Aileen confesses, she still didn't get any peace. In fact, she was just viewed as a hot property because media outlets went nuts, and she was, her face was everywhere. And so then this sort of shady character enters into the mix, and we were just researching her together before we went to tape. Arlene Prowley, who was a born-again Christian, saw Aileen on television and found her story very fascinating and said that God had told her to reach out to Aileen. So Aileen reached out to her and they developed some sort of a friendship, but she couldn't visit her because Arlene wasn't family. Yeah. And Aileen didn't really have any family. So Arlene adopted Aileen. God, these names are...
Arlene and Aileen.
Yeah, Arlene and Aileen. Sounds like the worst country duo ever. So Arlene adopted Aileen and became her mother, and then started giving her legal advice and also charging for interviews.
Yes, and ended up cashing in. It's just a theme in her life. She's just getting abused and taken advantage of. And the whole case too was, you know, very unforgiving. They weren't allowed to bring up Richard Mallory, the fact that he had been previously convicted of rape. You know, as they should be, again, you know, how much can you empathize with her? She is a serial killer. She killed 7 men. But they, you know, they were pretty harsh on her.
Yeah, so she is convicted, actually I have that she's convicted to 6 death sentences. And after a decade on death row, she terminates all of her appeals and she asks to be put to death.
Yeah.
And I think that this is really interesting because she continued to sort of give interviews and give insight up until
and she was just,
the day
her
she
mind was
died.
just deteriorating at this
Yeah.
point. Interviews with her on the day before her execution,
Yeah, you know, actually, since you bring it up, let's toss to a couple clips that I have of Aileen in her own words, some of these interviews behind bars. So let's just watch 1 and 2 back to back right now.
I'm not going to go to prison for these creeps. So I was thinking in my mind, okay, eventually you're going to catch me, but you're going to catch me down the road. I'm going to take a hell of a lot of men with me before I am ever executed.
But when the conversation turns to the victims' families, Aileen sounds like a completely different person.
I want you all out there to know that telling the truth was the hardest thing. I own them and start crying. Because I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for the families. I'm really sorry that your father or your brother or whoever he might have been for you, you know, in kinship, relationship, whatever, I'm really sorry they got killed as messed up in the head, man, after the rapes.
At the time of this interview, it had been 5 years since she had seen her former lover, Tyra Moore.
Do you miss her? Missed her a lot. I always miss her. And I'll always love her. And I'll be thinking about her the day I'm executed.
You know, I was just wondering how you're going to be, you know, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Are you prepared?
I'm prepared. I'm all right. I'm all right with it.
And how...
I'm all right with it, but like I said, remember, let them know that I know that the cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up. And let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer. I know they did, because I was no professional serial killer or anything, or murderer, or whatever you want to call it, you know. I wasn't professional at what I was doing.
Aileen,
I did some sloppy work, you know, and I left
How
prints.
have you prepared yourself for tomorrow morning?
I'm all right with it. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Hey, I was tortured at BCI. They had the intercom on in the room, and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997.
So yeah, so we just saw Aileen in her own words speaking out, and it's hard. I can't decide if I find her a sympathetic character. Do you? Can you reconcile these feelings? Because obviously she has such a sad childhood.
Yeah.
Do we then forgive her for someone who is clearly mentally ill?
I mean, it's interesting comparing her to other famous serial killers, like, for example, Ted Bundy. And I think what we were discussing earlier, the major difference there and the reason people can empathize, sympathize with her is because she wasn't doing it for the pleasure of killing. She was doing it to get their money. You know, and maybe there was some, you know, thrill there, but I think with a lot of the male serial killers, there was also, you know, they were mutilating their victims, sexual, you know, abuse, awful things, necrophilia. You know, there was none of that. And I think that's the major difference in why people can find, you know, themselves sort of almost forgiving her.
And also that she was a female serial killer. And I think what I've noticed in a lot of the different treatments of Aileen is that we sort of preemptively apologize for what she did in the beginning of any sort of, film that I'm watching or whatnot. It's, well, she did these things, but here's why.
Yeah.
And you look at, Ed Gein, you look at John Wayne Gacy, he doesn't really get that same treatment. They sort of brush over that part of the story.
Yeah.
They'll say, yeah, he had a difficult relationship with his mother did this, his mother did that. But
it is different. I remember watching the movie and definitely feeling sorry for her.
Do you think that's fair, though? Like, do you think she deserves that from us?
Probably not, but I think that it's something where, the extent of the deaths may have been prevented had she had a better life, gotten the treatment she needed. It was just one thing after another, and I think one day, she must have just snapped.
Yeah.
And I think what fascinates people so much about her, people are fascinated by murders, clearly.
What? They are?
And with somebody like Ted Bundy.
Think we should do a show about it?
It's, how can these people do these things? Mm-hmm. You can't fathom. And so that's why it's so interesting. But with her, it's almost, you sort of, as a woman anyway, you put yourself in that situation. Had this all happened to me, would I have done the same thing?
It's
Hopefully
sort of,
not. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill anyone.
It's sort of a question of, with Ted Bundy, it's look what we did, or look what he did. Look what we did. Look what he did. And then with Aileen Wuornos, it's like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
How did she get to this point?
prevented?
Could it have been prevented? And I think that her sitting down behind bars after she knew that she was going to be killed, and after she'd confessed, and just hearing this very troubled person, it does oddly humanize a monster. So before we call it quits for today, let's take a look at Aileen Wuornos as she was portrayed in the movie Monster by Charlize Theron, and then let's weigh in on a little bit of the portrayals and we think they were fair.
When I was little, I had a lot of dreams. And I was always secretly looking for who was gonna discover me. Was it this guy? Or maybe this one? You never knew. I lived that way for a long, long time, dreaming like that. But one day it just stopped.
I'm kind of broke right now, so I'm just trying to make some cash somehow.
Well, maybe I can help you out.
By the time I met Selby Wall, all I wanted was a beer.
Can I buy you that drink?
I got my own money.
I'm just trying to talk to someone. Do you want to stay with me?
Who was that person?
She was just a friend I made.
I think she was a street person.
Hey, lady love, you need a ride?
Can I ask you a question? Are you a prostitute?
Hey, man, don't go too far.
I just want a little privacy.
30 straight up.
Girls, I love them and I hate them.
Where'd you get this car?
I just borrowed it.
Life is funny. It's also strange how things can be so different than you think.
Are you okay?
I got everything going for me. I'm not a bad person. I'm a real good person.
Police urge anyone with any information about these crimes to contact your local authorities.
Lee, who killed that man?
What do you think?
Oh my God.
You're never gonna understand it, so you gotta trust me.
I got it under control, man.
She's all screwed up.
I was raped and Beecham was gonna get killed.
You can't kill people.
Says who? You knew.
No.
Shelby.
This is your deal. They're coming for us.
They got nothing. They're not even looking. There's a whole world of people killing and raping, but I am the only one killing them. People like me and you go down every day. The thing no one ever realized about me was that I could train myself into anything.
So what do you think about that portrayal in Monster? Also, so something to note about the movie Monster is that it's not a biopic about Aileen Wuornos necessarily, because it's just based on true events. Christina Ricci's character is named Selby, even though she's obviously playing Tyria Moore. And then, do you think that that's fair, the treatment that they did of Aileen?
I do, because, as you said, they changed all the names. It's an artistic venture. They're not trying to, every movie is gonna have their own bias, and not a lot of people are gonna watch a movie about just like a cold-hearted killer shooting a bunch of people,
Right.
But when you bring in that love story and the, you've got this like Romeo and Juliet thing going on. I don't fault them for that.
What do you think about how they did it in American Horror Story? That was a little bit more
That was
cold-blooded
interesting.
killer.
It was a bunch of different
Serial
famous
killers. Yeah. You have Richard Ramirez, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, I believe someone based off of H.H. Holmes, the Zodiac Killer, and then Aileen Wuornos, who is significantly less violent.
Does she fit with those people?
But don't you think it is interesting that we bring up her name as synonymous with these killers with way higher kill counts, some of the most evil people in the world,
and then you pleasure.
Right, that took pleasure in this torture. Should she be in that company? And that's why I wanted to talk about her with you today, is because as we've sat here, we've gone through her whole life. I still don't know why I feel this sympathy for her.
A victim of society of her own life, and she had a lot of animosity towards society.
She was an angry person.
She's quoted, she's like, I'm going to heaven while y'all rot in hell.
She cursed out the jury, she cursed out the judge after she was convicted. Was she truly evil, or was she just a product of evil things happening to her? But that's all the time we have for today. Yeah, let us know in the comment section below. What do you think about the case of Aileen Wuornos? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.